If you've stumbled upon this video, there's a good chance you've heard of this song.
Show me how.
Maybe this one too.
I hope to be around.
Men I Trust fits in a unique spot in today's music. Garnering success in the age of TikTok musicians, the Canadian trio hasn't put nearly as much effort into conquering the algorithm as their peers. Yet, Men I Trust has managed to carve out their own pocket in indie culture, and is a perfect example of how social media can help a band grow a community and find new listeners, while not actively chasing the newest video formats or social media trends on TikTok and Instagram. How did Men I Trust overcome this insurmountable obstacle that other musicians who make music just as good fail to conquer? And what can we learn from independent musicians of the past who successfully found their audience without the help of a major label? Founded in 2014 by friends Jesse and Dragos while attending University Laval in Quebec, Men I Trust is an indie band known for their fusion of catchy pop melodies over laid-back jazz grooves, although this wasn't always their signature sound. Their first album, self-titled Men I Trust, is an 11-track electronic pop album. This project was approached from the perspective of maintaining creative control over the instrumentals and production, while featuring various guest vocalists, most notably O'Dowd, who appears on multiple tracks throughout the project, in return for a few more on the band's following project, Headroom. Headroom, released in 2015, saw the band move just a little closer to the sound we know them for today. While still maintaining a lot of their electronic roots from their first album, songs such as Out of Myself and Curious Fish start to resemble more of what we would come to hear on their future projects. This is likely to do with new collaborator Emma, who after this album would become a staple member of the band, solidifying the group as a trio and contributing to the creative direction and sound we recognize them for today. The following years were big for Men I Trust. The trio made appearances at multiple music festivals, embarked on international tours, and dropped quite a few singles leading into their third and most popular album, Uncle Jazz. After being delayed multiple times over the 3 years it was worked on, including once the night before it was set to release, 2019's Uncle Jazz was an album that's hard to categorize by genre. Taking inspiration from jazz, dream pop, chillwave, yacht rock, dance, and much more, songs like Show Me How, I Hope to Be Around, and You Deserve This are some of the band's biggest songs, and for good reason. Uncle Jazz is a fusion of creative choices that could only work in a band that creates the way Men I Trust does. The band's creative process tends to work in a way that allows each member's creative choices to influence a song's direction. In a 2023 interview with Reverb, Men I Trust had this to say about their creative process. We don't really jam together that much to work on song ideas. We have a big project folder in the cloud, and we work on our computers individually. There isn't a streamlined process per se. Sometimes, Jesse will start a beat with a bass line or guitar line or some chord progressions, or I or Emma will do that. And then we all pitch in together to add our own stuff to make it sound like a Men I Trust record. This process is most likely the reason the band can make songs that sound totally different from one another, but still sound like Men I Trust. During the pandemic, Men I Trust found many ways to stay busy, appearing on NPR's Tiny Desk Home concerts and releasing their album Forever Live Sessions, featuring live renditions of the band playing songs from their catalog, giving listeners a unique way to experience their music while concerts were mostly impossible to perform. All this while leading into the band's fourth album. Untourable Album, a name reflecting the time period in which it was created, creative choices with production style and instrument selection, was, in my opinion at least, their most aesthetically cohesive sounding body of work to date. While still maintaining their diverse pool of influences, Untourable Album is a hazy, lo-fi, synth-heavy atmosphere that puts you into a world of its own. With roughly 4 years passing since its release, the Canadian trio is far from slowing down. The first 2 months of 2025 alone have seen the release of Forever Live Sessions Volume 2, the announcement of 2 new albums this year, and a supporting international tour. It's hard to point to one moment when Men I Trust's career exploded. It was more of a gradual rise in notoriety, an example of how consistently releasing and touring good music can garner the same success as anybody with the backing of a large record label pushing their music on social media can. But as you know, this isn't always the case. There are thousands of examples of incredibly talented artists, signed and independent, who also consistently release incredible music, yet struggle to find any sort of traction. Why is this? Why can some artists gain success from seemingly just good music alone, while others struggle to find an audience? To answer this question, let's dig a little deeper and take a look at the history of independent musicians, their struggles and successes before and after social media. In 1976, Pete and Howard the Buzzcocks would make music history and lay the groundwork for the entire history of independent music. The two heard about a show in London by emerging punk band the Sex Pistols. While attending the show, they met manager of the band Malcolm. Pete, having some experience putting on and organizing shows, thought if they could organize a show for the Sex Pistols, they could open up for them and get their band in front of a new audience. After pitching this to Malcolm, he agreed. If they organized it, the band would show up. The Buzzcocks' debut show on April 1st, 1976, 2 months before the Sex Pistols show, was so bad that they had the gig pulled out from under them just 3 songs in. The two continued to organize the concert, even after agreeing they were not ready to open up for the Sex Pistols. The concert on June 4th, 1976, was so successful that the Pistols came back a few weeks later for another show, where the Buzzcocks decided they were ready to open for them. This concert, on July 20th, 1976, at the Lesser Free Trade Hall, was such a success that it put the Buzzcocks at the center of the independent punk scene. In attendance at the show was Mark Smith, who would go on to start The Fall, Steve Morrissey, who would go on to start The Smiths, Bernard Sumner and Peter Hook, who would start Joy Division, and Tony Wilson, who 2 years later would soon start one of the most important independent labels at the time, Factory Records. This concert was not just influential, it was the genesis of all independent music to come. Spiral Scratch, the 1977 4-song EP by the Buzzcocks, released under their own label, New Hormones, is largely considered one of the first independent releases. The DIY punk band showed the world that you could record and release music on your own, laying the groundwork for independent labels like Rough Trade, Fiction, and Factory, who started to pop up around the same time. These labels not only helped musicians release music without the intervention of major labels, but also helped them cultivate the style now associated with indie music. Independent musicians started to make headway in the late 80s. Bands like The Smiths, Sonic Youth, and the Pixies started to release classic albums that would inspire music for generations far after their releases. It was around this time that independent music became more than just a technical term for bands releasing music without the help of a major label. Independent music was becoming a genre of its own. By the 2000s, indie music had gone fully mainstream overseas in North America. Acts like Nirvana, Bon Iver, Modest Mouse, and Beach House, pushing the genre so far that the label indie wasn't really representative of their sound, even if inspired. Which brings us to today, where the genre indie isn't really helpful beyond describing a band whose sound features a guitar and lo-fi production. Where there is a market, there will be people trying to make money, and this subculture was no exception. With indie music's rise in popularity came the interest of major labels. Today, artists like Billie Eilish, Noah Kahan, and Clairo are just a few examples of artists whose sound very much falls into the category of indie, but still release music with the help of major labels or their subsidiaries. Not to mention artists who start their careers independent, but choose to sign with a major label down the road. With all of this said, what does a record label do, and why was it so hard to be an independent artist? Well, the cost to record an album could have varied greatly depending on the genre, preparedness, and level of fame. From what I could find, in the 80s, it would have ran about $25,000 on the lower end, adjusting for inflation, just to record an album. For someone who wanted to make music and publish it, this would have been a significant roadblock. Record labels have played an important role in the history of music. Typically, record labels would scout for talent, take care of the cost of production, manufacturing, distributing, and marketing. Being an independent musician in the 70s and 80s was not cheap, and the deep pockets of the record labels are the reason we have some of the music we have today. If we look at the current musical landscape, music is cheaper and more accessible to make than ever. Recording a song no longer costs thousands of dollars. With the rise of computers came the rise of DAWs, or digital audio workstations. Now recording a song can be as cheap as $100 for software and equipment, if not free. Look at indie artists like Steve Lacy recording Grammy-nominated songs solely on their iPhones. This doesn't mean that record labels still don't have their role in the industry. Recording and producing music is an art of its own, and those who do it well are not cheap. This has led to lo-fi production becoming a staple sound in the indie genre. So much so that even bands with money opt to forgo the clean professional sound of a well-produced record just for the aesthetics. Marketing and distribution are also a burden on their own, and if you make music, you may not have the interest, motivation, or funds to do it yourself. Labels can help you get your music on top playlists with large followings, give you a marketing budget, or have a team of marketers help you. If we look again at Men I Trust, they had production covered as Dragos majored in audio production. However, they could not find a label to help them with distributing and marketing, leaving them to figure it out themselves. It was only after finding success did the band get offers from labels. Seeing as they had already learned it all themselves, they would go on to decline offers from even major labels, which leads us to ask, why would artists be adverse to signing to a major label even when the opportunity presents itself? Wouldn't the financial and mental burden of everything it takes to manage a band make this seem appealing? In some sense, yes, but this oversimplifies the relationship between an artist and their label. There are two big areas to consider before signing to a label. Record labels are not in the business of creating art, they're in the business of generating profit. This leads labels to focus more on marketability over artistic integrity, often prioritizing artists who are already established over emerging talent. When an artist is signed to a label, they're not being paid to make music. They're often given an advance, which is treated like a loan. The artist is paid an upfront fee to record an album, and when it is finished, that artist does not make any money until the advance is paid back. On top of the advance that needs paid back, contracts are usually unfavorable to the artist. After the advance, record labels often take a large percentage of royalties from their net earnings. This is only exacerbated when you have a band with multiple members who need to be paid as well, not to mention royalties that need to be paid to other contributors on the record. It is not uncommon for artists to find themselves in debt even after finding success. Independent artists, on the other hand, get to cut out the label from the profit split entirely. Labels often retain ownership of the master recordings of a song, meaning they have the rights to use, distribute, and profit from their recordings, deciding when and how they get commercialized. This is most common amongst artists with little leverage when negotiating with a label. This leads to labels having a lot of creative control. While the extent of control often varies, labels can make a slew of decisions on behalf of the artist, like choosing producers, songwriters, marketing, artwork, song selection, collaborators, and overall direction of the music. Not to mention, a label can sometimes choose to scrap an entire project, leaving an artist in debt or shelved completely.
Hi, my name's Spilly Cave, and I aim to be a peddler of whimsy.
TikTok is giving artists a new way to obtain leverage. Labels often keep a close eye on what's trending, and if you have a viral song, you likely have multiple labels offering you deals. If you have shown that you can make your own music and find your own audience, labels are forced into giving you better percentages or even licensing your music for a period of time versus outright ownership. Marketing your music today is not far from how it was before the rise of social media. The goal? Reach an audience enthusiastic enough to show up again. With the help of today's algorithms, it is easier than ever before. One video is all it takes, and platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube will take your music and put it in front of millions of viewers who already love similar styles and genres. The hardest part today is not reaching the audience, but telling the audience you're worth paying attention to. The barrier of entry is no longer effort and good music. It's your ability to hook a viewer and engage them enough to leave the platform they're on and engage with you on a music streaming platform. This has created a flood of artists who, by all measures, make incredible music, now racing to be amongst the first to make or contribute to the next video trend or format. There's no shortage of artists posting the same videos hundreds of times, over and over, with different captions, outfits, locations, and poses, trying to find the right combination that gets the algorithm to push it out to those millions of potential viewers. Once your video gets pushed, now you're competing with thousands of other artists doing the exact same thing. Likes and views only go so far. You need to be so compelling that someone clicks on your profile and streams your music, or uses your song in their own videos. This doesn't even scratch the surface of types of videos people make. Fake organic moments, rage bait, slop, listicles disguising self-promotion, not to mention all the other niches and interests where people follow similar patterns of self-promotion. With songs like Show Me How having over 150,000 videos and tens if not hundreds of millions of views on TikTok alone, it's no wonder the band has gained some popularity. This takes us back to our original question. How does a band like Men I Trust, who has a comparatively light social media presence, outperform other artists who go out of their way to promote their music? Well, I believe in this case you could replace Men I Trust with any band who has had some sort of big song on social media without intentionally trying to make it go viral. I think if this problem had a simple answer, there wouldn't be a problem to begin with. At least for me, while researching for this video, there wasn't any standout answers. I've come to the conclusion that it's some intangible aspect of the creator and consumer of art and the proven method of effort in good music. While I did say this was no longer the barrier of entry to promoting your music, it does stay a prerequisite. While Men I Trust proves you don't need to go out of your way to create a viral moment that propels your career to the next level, you do need to consistently put your music out there in some form of meaningful way that engages a listener, maybe a bit of luck. For Men I Trust, I think it comes down to the relentless touring and releasing music. When Men I Trust is not promoting an album, they're releasing singles. Fans of the trio never have to go very long without something new. Their music videos have accrued tens of millions of views, showing that the band understands how to capture the aesthetics of their music, and consequently, their fan base. Good art exists on more than one level. Good music is good music, but good music is something you can feel, something you can connect with on a level deeper than words can describe. And this goes even further. Not everyone connects with art the same way. Some people just have the right combination that resonates with more people than others. This doesn't invalidate anybody's music. It can take time to find the right voice to say what you feel, or an audience who will appreciate the music for what it is. Things will come more naturally to some than others, but passion and persistence will always outpace natural talent. I think it's appropriate to leave you with a quote by Pete Shelley of the Buzzcocks, who said, reflecting on their influences on the independent scene, "By exercising your will, you can make things happen." So everything that has happened since is a direct result of that.